live view of the BlueBird 1 to 5 mission at the launch pad here in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Welcome to our webcast. I am your host, Dave Mosher, and I am a member of AST SpaceMobile. We are coming to you from the Apollo Saturn V Center at Kennedy Space Center. I don't know if you can hear that in the background, but a big crowd has assembled here to witness history in the making. In fact, let's take a quick look at the floor if we can. We have hundreds of guests here that are assembled. And a little later, we should hear from our founder, chairman, and CEO, Abel Avellán, in a quick speech to that crowd. Now, we are located just a few miles away from Space Launch Complex 40, or LC-40 for short. A Falcon 9 rocket is standing 23 stories tall out there with AST SpaceMobile's first 5 commercial satellites, called BlueBirds, nestled inside the top of its nose cone. AST SpaceMobile's BlueBird 1 to 5 mission is not only a huge milestone for our company, but also the future of how the world connects. Why? Each of our BlueBird satellites is built to eliminate dead zones. They will provide cellular broadband coverage from space directly to everyday phones, just like the one you already have in your pocket. Now, our unprecedented mission is currently scheduled to lift off at 4:52 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. However, like all rocket launches, the situation is fluid. We'll keep you posted on weather and other issues that may affect launch timing while we count down to that launch. In the meantime, we have a great show for you today. We have more live views of the launch vehicle and words from some very special guests that we have here, and also some pre-recorded footage. Now, AST SpaceMobile has partnered up with some incredible players across the mobile industry, including American Tower, AT&T, Rakuten, Verizon, and Vodafone, some of which are here today to share their amazing stories. Now, if you are new to AST SpaceMobile, welcome. Thank you for joining us. In fact, I have a little something special to catch you up on our history and what we're all about, featuring our founder, chairman, and CEO, Abel Avellán. Let's play that clip.
I believe connectivity is a human right. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I do one thing at a time. And when I get into it, I put all my soul and life into it. When we started this, people thought that was actually impossible to be done. But around 2017, we came out with the idea. It was me and my chief scientist that started doing calculations of what it will take for a regular phone to connect to space. We have 3,500 patents, patent and patent pending claims, to be more precise. We have 2 fundamentals in our engineering, our thought processes. This has to be broadband. It has to be scalable to hundreds of millions of users, which is only possible by very, very large satellites with a very unique capability of connecting directly to cell phones. We want to promise customers, regardless of where you are, regardless of what phone you have in your hand, you will have broadband in your phone. We are located in Midland, Texas. We had 185,000 square feet facility of manufacturing, one of the largest in the nation. We launched Blue Walker 3, which is the biggest structure in space, in LEO, other than the International Space Station. With Blue Walker 3, we did many, many firsts. The first commercial company to put an asset of this kind. We did the first phone call ever done from space directly to a regular phone, the phone that you had in your pocket. We did the first LTE connection directly from space to a regular handset, and we did also the first 5G connection directly to a handset. Now, as you know, we're moving into launching operational satellites for commercially available services for our customers. We're doing something very, very big, and I think with this technology we can. We can really affect 1 billion lives.
Welcome back to the studio. If you are just joining us, I'm Dave Mosher with AST SpaceMobile, and we are counting down to the launch of our first 5 commercial satellites called BlueBirds. These birds represent the dawn of the world's first space-based cellular broadband network. They are designed to work like cell towers, so your phone doesn't know the difference. We just heard from Abel Avellán, our CEO, founder, and chairman of AST SpaceMobile. But there are some folks who have been with us since the early days and have a unique lens on our company, its origins, and our pioneering satellite direct-to-cell technology that is capable of 4G and 5G connectivity and beyond. Before AST SpaceMobile went public, many of our would-be strategic partners looked at what Abel and the team were doing and our unique plan to use satellites to connect to everyday cell phones. One of those people was Ed Knapp of American Tower Corporation, who is now a board member for AST SpaceMobile. Let's listen to what Ed had to say as we near today's highly anticipated launch.
Hello, my name is Ed Knapp, and I'm the CTO at American Tower. American Tower is a leading independent digital infrastructure company operating both wireless towers and data centers around the world. Several years ago, American Tower had the opportunity to make an investment in AST SpaceMobile. As part of that investment, I became a director of the business. Abel and the team's vision was about connecting everyone everywhere on this planet. And our vision of building a more connected world is something we shared. Also, because of our business, we have distributed assets globally, both in terms of towers and data centers in many countries around the world. And in order to make the satellite come to life, we have to deploy gateways that connect the satellite to the rest of the internet terrestrially. We could help them accelerate the opportunity for that infrastructure to be put in place. So it's fundamentally part of our core DNA at American Tower. And ultimately, the vision that most people have is that the terrestrial network and the satellite networks, especially one that could deliver direct-to-device broadband, which is fundamentally a shift that Abel and the team and that vision had, we can make that happen in a way that is more seamless, and we can leverage the data between the satellite and the terrestrial to have better performing networks for our customers. As a CTO, you're always looking for the latest technology. You're trying to find ways to help your business grow. You're trying to find ways to transform the way you do business so that ultimately shareholders are going to benefit. From a technical perspective, there are always challenges, right? Timeline of when things have, the risk of whether a technology is going to make it or not. And ultimately, when I looked at AST SpaceMobile and we looked at the opportunity is huge, right? So it's something that fundamentally gets your attention. It's pretty exciting to see that whole journey, and I'm looking forward to the launch, the upcoming launch, and the ability for those satellites to deliver services and the beginning of commercial capabilities and scale. The upcoming BlueBird mission is a very exciting point in the milestone and the journey for AST SpaceMobile. First, the most important milestone, which has been the history of getting to this point, is the manufacturability and the scale at which now AST SpaceMobile is able to deliver these satellites. When these satellites unfold and when they can make connectivity to, again, your average smartphone and broadband connectivity direct to device, that was proven in Blue Walker 3, but now it's going to be proving at a commercial grade and at scale. And I'm really excited about the effort that the team had put in over the last few years to learn from all of the previous work and to have that culminate now in what we would be an exciting next few months post-launch on the arrival and again, the positioning of the satellites in the sky for various customers, and the ability for those customers to now realize value and connectivity on a commercial basis. And that's really exciting for me. What we're seeing is the ability to enhance public safety, close the digital divide, to be in a position where fundamentally the operators who we serve can further expand their network and capability in a more reliable and high-performing way. That's ultimately the initial transformation. But what's enabled that is recently the FCC, through its order on supplemental coverage from space, or SCS, it really set the groundwork in the leading way globally for how terrestrial spectrum can be used in a non-terrestrial way in satellite. And we saw that where operators in the US have come together to be able to put that spectrum to work to serve those purposes. And in the past, when I spoke about this opportunity, and these are very complementary networks, I talked about it. Today, users don't expect to have coverage everywhere all the time. And I said in the future, they will demand it. Well, that future is now. This is, the final frontier, if you will, in wireless. I've spent a long time in my career transforming from 1G to 6G, all the different wireless technologies that people have done research on, had to build and execute on. Many challenging, let's call it capabilities that were overcome. This is one of those huge challenges, and it's such, Abel and the team should have a lot of pride in what they've accomplished to date, and there's obviously a lot more to come. But with that, I see that the future of connectivity everywhere at any time is now. And BlueBird 1 and the 5 satellites will be another major step in that journey. And it's super exciting to be part of it.
And that was Ed Knapp, CTO of American Tower and a board member of AST SpaceMobile, sharing his his stories of how he came into this company and his vision of it. Now, it is incredible to have Ed on our team, plus one of the largest cell tower companies on Earth, mind you, supporting our mission to connect the unconnected. As we count down to launch, the Space Force is closely monitoring our launch weather today. The latest forecast gives us about a 30% chance of squeaking toward liftoff today. The good news is that is the overall window, so we may have a little bit better window at our time, which is currently going to be 4:52 a.m. That could move. We'll watch the weather. So that launch window is open through 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, approximately. So we have a good amount of time to wait for a cloud moving over the launch pad to get out of the way. In fact, we are about 20 minutes away from finding out just how serious a launch attempt will be, which again is at 4:52 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time as of right now. We are listening for a call called a go for a prop load. That means they're going to start fueling the rocket with propellant. Because if you don't fuel a rocket, you can't launch it. So it's a really important call for us to listen to today. Now, while we wait for that, and as more of you join us this morning, rolling out of bed, or maybe you're in Europe and you're already awake and got your coffee, I'd like to introduce you to a very special guest who knows a lot more about I do than both cell towers and satellites. And this person also has a very unique view of AST SpaceMobile's journey in earlier years. With me here in Cape Canaveral, Florida, from AT&T's headquarters in Dallas, Texas, is J.R. Wilson, Vice President for Tower Strategy and Roaming. J.R., welcome to the webcast.
Thank you, Dave. Great to see you. Good morning.
Thanks. Now, I hear you're a big fan of AST SpaceMobile. And also, AT&T has some deep-rooted interest in this company. Can you kind of paint a picture for us here about that?
Yeah, first, you got to go back. So obviously, we're a 100-year-plus company. We've been around for a very long time, and AT&T has a very rich history when it comes to satellites, and it actually goes back to 1960. AT&T, working with Bell Labs, we launched our first satellite. And in 1962, we launched the first communication satellite. It was called Telstar. And that was quite successful. And you think about that time frame, like 1960, that was 3 years after Sputnik. Yeah, 9 years before the lunar landing. So very, very rich history. And then you look at the journey kind of leading up to now. We made many, many investments in satellites over the years, and those investments came in different shapes and forms, including broadcast, which we still have investments in today. We've used satellites for cell site backhaul in very remote regions. We use satellite connectivity extensively for our national disaster recovery, which is really the envy of the industry, leading all the way up to now in our collaboration with AST.
That's incredible history. I was just thinking about that as I was looking over today's notes. Like, that was 3 years after Sputnik when you guys were working with satellites. It's
amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's really amazing.
So, and I didn't personally think of AT&T's history as going back that far. So
yeah,
really,
and I don't think most people think of us as a company that's like a satellite company.
Well,
because
clearly,
we're a connectivity company.
Yeah. Well, clearly you have that interest in satellite companies, and especially ours. You've kept a pretty close tab on the progress that we've made over the years here. Can you share some of those things that stick out to you? Those major milestones that AST SpaceMobile, in partnership with AT&T, has sort of accomplished.
Sure. Well, first is, it kind of goes back to the shirt, right? We believe that connecting changes everything. So that's the mission that we've been on with AST SpaceMobile, and we've reached some very significant milestones. So going back to the launch of Blue Walker in 2022, as soon as we could, we began testing. So we first, we started with our first voice call, then we moved on to our first video call, then our first 5G call, and of course we've been doing a lot of other testing and configuration along the way, working closely with the Bell and the rest of the AS team. So this is really all about how do we start to pre-optimize a network getting ready for, commercial launch and a true go-to-market.
So, I mean, you've given us a really good detailed background on the company as its relationship to satellites.
Yeah.
What about do you have any personal connection to these things we're trying to launch in the space today? Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, a little bit. I actually started my career with a company called Teledesic, which was funded by Bill Gates and Craig McCaw, and the mission of Teledesic was effectively to become a satellite broadband provider, similar to what Starlink does today and companies like OneWeb. And then I moved on to AT&T, and my journey at AT&T has really been about, how do we connect as many places globally and in the U.S. as we possibly can. And, we've accomplished quite a bit over those years. You look at our roaming business, we cover 225 countries.
That's amazing.
We have more carriers in more countries than I believe that we still hold the title of anyone globally. So that's one. And then secondarily, I was involved in starting a business that provided wireless communications on cruise ships, and all of the backhaul was delivered over satellite. So I was a big part of that business for a number of years. And in fact, we still have a relationship with that business, and our customers can go on 175 plus cruise ships globally. So this is just like a natural extension of everything that we've been doing and everything I've personally been doing in my career for the last 2 decades plus.
You kind of anticipated my next question, which was, what is a terrestrial, mobile network operator doing, like hanging out with and buddying up with a company like AST SpaceMobile? You sort of answered that, but I don't know if you wanted to add any more flourish.
Well, look,
to that.
it's a very symbiotic relationship, right? Because in order for direct-to-mobile to work, you have to use terrestrial spectrum. So it was a natural partnership. And actually, going back to that experience that I had with the cruise lines, that was when I first met Abel. And that was actually when he first started sharing his ideas, his vision of what became AST.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just really, really cool. So, and going back to that testing that we did, the voice, the video call, the 5G, I mean, that was all delivered over AT&T spectrum. So it just makes sense that we collaborate very tightly.
Yeah, and here we are on the cusp of launching these 5 birds. I mean, what does this mean? What does this mean to you? What does it mean to the company?
Yeah,
Why is it significant?
Great question. It's huge, right? Because direct to mobile, I mean, what the beauty of it is the seamlessness of it. Because you don't have to, you can use your existing handset. It'll work with the majority of handsets that are already out there. You don't have to alter your device in any way, shape, or form. You don't even have to download an app. It's just going to work. And you think about, building out that global footprint for roaming. You think about all the cruise lines that we have coverage. And then you think about the great network that we have in the U.S., the leading national provider when it comes to coverage. There's still thousands of miles, square miles of coverage gaps. So this is like part of the overall mission is how do we just paint everything blue? We like blue. So
we like orange, but we'll trade with some blue colors too.
We were orange for a while too, so we like orange. So.
I don't remember those days, but orange goes well with blue, so I'll take that. Well, JR, thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you.
Dave, thank you so much. Look, I think this is going to go down as one of the great innovations of the 21st century, so I'm thrilled to be here.
Great.
Yeah.
If you're just joining this webcast, welcome. I am your host, Dave Mosher, and with AST SpaceMobile here at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, Florida, are hundreds of guests eagerly awaiting to see if we have a launch today. Let's have a look down at that scene if we can here. We have, yeah, there we go. We can see everybody hanging out. I think they're watching this webcast, so if you guys want to wave, go ahead and do that. Incredible show. Yeah, there we go. Incredible showing out here. Really hoping we get to lift off this morning. And speaking of rockets, our first 5 commercial satellites called BlueBirds are nestled inside the top of that 229-foot tall launch vehicle out there. In fact, we have some really cool images of those satellites. Let's pull those up. Wow, look at that. These are the 5 BlueBird satellites stacked on top of a dispenser. And this is shortly before we encapsulated them, meaning we put them inside of the nose cone, and that is 2 halves of a fairing. You can see those right there. Those slowly come together, seal up the payload, and protect it during launch. So during launch, those fairings will come off and return to Earth, and satellites will keep going on the upper stage or second stage. And again, those golden cylinders are the BlueBirds. Each is about the size of a small car, maybe a Fiat, if you can picture that, or a very large refrigerator, maybe a walk-in refrigerator. And they are affixed to that custom dispenser. I don't know what the technical term for that arrangement is, but I'd call it the revolver chamber or maybe stack of cans. A huge number of factors are, of course, beyond our control when we're going down to T0, the moment of launch. The good news is we're only about 10 minutes away from knowing if that rocket will be fueled. And that is a very necessary step for seeing a launch because, again, you can't have a launch without fuel inside the rocket. We'll keep you posted on that as soon as we have word. While we count down to launch, I want to give you a better sense of the incredible scale of those first-generation BlueBirds you saw just a moment ago and the plans we have for the next generation. Those BlueBirds are each compacted in their containers, which have that golden thermal blanket around them. And however, all of our satellites, once deployed in space, will be the largest ever communications arrays in low Earth orbit, or LEO. Now, size matters when you're trying to take a small phone like this and connect it to space and provide high-speed internet without any modifications to the device. So let's watch that clip.
Of all the electronic, calibration, thermal management, flight, software, everything that is required to fly in a spacecraft is also a lot around how we compact them very tightly before we put them into the rockets for launch and then deploy reliably in space. To give you a sense how big these satellites are, that is how they look when they're compacted before they get into the launch vehicle. And when they deploy in space, they are the size of that tool that you see in the back. Very proud of what the team have put together here. Let's keep it up to achieve our mission of connecting the unconnected.
If you're just joining us, I'm Dave Mosher, head of content at AST SpaceMobile, and we are counting down to the launch of our first 5 commercial satellites called BlueBirds. The weather is challenging our target launch time today, given the thick cloud cover. The latest forecast estimates about a 70% chance of overall violating any one of a number of weather-related rules. There are about 10 of those, if you're counting. The good news is that if we miss an opportunity, at 4:52 a.m., which is when our launch window opens, we do have some time to wait out that weather until we are go for liftoff. Now, for example, if a big cloud is sitting over the rocket and we need to wait for it to move out of the way, we have some time to do that. So we may not launch at exactly 4:52. Stay tuned to this webcast. We'll keep you posted. And right now, we are awaiting a very important call for what's called prop load. This is when the propellant goes into the rocket. And we are listening for a call from the launch director at SpaceX around T-minus 38 minutes to launch, or about 4:14 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That is when we will know if our launch vehicle, a Falcon 9 rocket, will be fueled with liquid propellant and liquid oxygen. If so, we are very likely looking at a launch today around 4:52 a.m. If not, we will get launch delay information to you as soon as we have it. And trust me, we're all anxiously awaiting that information. By the way, that propellant I'm talking about is a form of kerosene called RP1, which is a sort of higher grade jet fuel. Most of that prop will pump into the largest section of the rocket, called the first stage booster, and in a separate tank, liquid oxygen, to eventually and rapidly combust that fuel together. So both the fuel and oxygen are very, very cold, especially that liquid oxygen. It's colder than negative 330 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe. So don't panic if you see a lot of gases coming off of the rocket. That's water vapor condensing from the air due to a very chilly fuel temperature. And it's very humid today, so you might see a lot of that. The effect is similar to dropping a piece of dry ice into a bucket of water. It sort of bubbles up. Now, the rocket may also get frosty on the outside, might look a little white. That's also typical. No need to panic about that. And once the RP1 fueling wraps up, we should hear about liquid oxygen going into the smaller upper stage of the rocket. That should start around T-minus 16 minutes into the countdown we are in today. While we are waiting, I have a really great video coming up. It explains how the space-based cellular broadband network that AST SpaceMobile is building could really help out workers who put their lives on the line for the rest of us. Let's roll that tape.
For U.S. emergency services, agencies, and the military in rural and remote regions, the stakes couldn't be higher. Every day, these hard-working Americans put their lives on the line to serve and protect this nation and its citizens. Yet connectivity is often missing when and where they need it most. AST SpaceMobile's pioneering space-based cellular broadband technology could help close crucial gaps in disaster recovery, wildfire fronts, border security, conflict areas, forward operating sites at sea, and more. Here's how. For emergency responders, AST SpaceMobile's planned satellite direct-to-device connectivity could help streamline response and evacuations when traditional networks go offline or don't exist. To smoke jumpers fighting wildfires, real-time data on rapidly changing conditions could offer a clear, safer path through smoke and flames. At borders, where security is paramount, yet internet is lacking, broadband connectivity from orbit could enable smart monitoring and help maximize limited resources. In coastal waters beyond the reach of cell towers, broadband data could mean the difference between lives saved and lost, or threats thwarted or undetected. Up in the sky, a new means of connectivity could harden in-flight defenses and help keep busy airborne travel lanes clearer. In distant military outposts, those who serve could stay better connected, more ready to defend and protect. And far from home, they have a space-age way to stay in touch with loved ones. Our team has already proven the technology works. We've achieved multiple historic feats, including two-way voice and video calls over 4G LTE and 5G, as well as more than 21 megabit per second download speeds directly from space to everyday smartphones. Now, we're building the world's first and only space-based cellular broadband network, a fleet of satellites designed to work like cell towers with ordinary mobile devices on the ground. Our BlueBird satellites will have the largest ever commercial communications arrays in low Earth orbit, with the capability to provide up to 120 megabit per second peak data rates. Our innovation may benefit not only mobile end users by providing broadband connectivity in remote areas, but also enhance the work, operations, and capabilities of government agencies. AST SpaceMobile is an American company that's committed to providing secure, reliable, broadband-capable connectivity solutions, especially to our nation's most dedicated. But we're not going it alone. Our industry-leading strategic partners include AT&T, Bell Canada, Google, Verizon, and Vodafone. We also have agreements with more than 45 mobile network operators around the world, who together have access to more than 2.8 billion subscribers. We are AST SpaceMobile. A more connected world, with all its limitless possibilities, is just over the horizon.
I don't know about you, but I am not a fan of dead zones for cellular broadband, and I can't wait for this mission to get into low Earth orbit. If you like that video, you can find a lot more of those on our YouTube channel. That is at youtube.com/C for channel /AST SpaceMobile. That's youtube.com/C/AST SpaceMobile, all one word. Please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any updates. And if you're watching on the webcast now on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe as well. Now, I want to talk about some of that content we have in there. We have so many videos that really get into the premise and the mission and the incredible technology really that we've developed over the past years here at AST SpaceMobile. We have interviews with partners, including, you saw JR here earlier today. We have an interview of, for example, Chris Sambar and him talking about the story of how AST SpaceMobile and AT&T sort of got together. And we have a little bit more of that story today later in the webcast. But we also have interviews with, for example, an executive from Telefonica in South America, someone from Nokia, someone from TSMC, the manufacturer of chips. TSMC is our partner in producing ASIC chips, the application-specific integrated circuits that are going to be in our next generation of BlueBird satellites. That's a really important component of the future of this company, and we have a little video about that too. So, and speaking of those chips, those are going to be approximately, on the new satellites, the next gen, it's going to be 10 times more capacity than the satellites we're launching today. So we're already kind of several steps ahead of where we need to be in our manufacturing, and we're working really hard to produce those satellites and make history. Now, we also have some explainer videos and some behind-the-scenes videos if you care to take a look at those. Now, I think we are still waiting for a call on loading that propellant. I haven't seen anything yet, so I'm going to keep telling you about some other things. So, for example, we have a satellite operations center in Lanham, Maryland. What is that? This is a place where our mobsters, who are mission operators, are anxiously waiting for this mission to launch so they can phone home to the satellites and talk to them. So I don't know if we can pull up that view of the Mission Operations Center at this point. Okay, we don't have that view just yet. But as you can see next to me, we do have a launch vehicle, and it is on the pad, it is vertical, and our satellites are on top there. And I do see what looks like some gases moving over there, so we may have propellant loading into that rocket. Let's take a look at that. Now, it looks like we're just looking at some convection there, all the wiggliness that you see on the screen there. So we're going to keep a view of this launch pad for just a moment while we wait for that call and see if we are going to launch at 4:52 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I'll be back with you in just a moment. All right, guys. We are going to have a little bit of an announcement here at the Apollo Saturn V Center. And again, once again, I'm Dave Mosher. I am the host of this podcast. I'm with AST SpaceMobile. On the floor, we have Tom Dewar with AT&T. He's warming up the crowd for an announcement with our CEO, chairman, and founder, Abel Avian. So he's going to do a little bit of a speech. Let's listen in to what's going down there on the floor as we wait to see what happens.
We're down here while they do the webcast up there, but you're here on an incredible day. AST SpaceMobile here, working really to usher in the beginning of a new era in mobile connectivity. Really aimed at eliminating those cellular dead zones that we sometimes find ourselves in. And I know when we travel from place to place, as we do so often nowadays, we can hit those. But what we're doing today here is going to help eliminate a lot of that. And it certainly goes, from an AT&T perspective, a long way to our goal of being the best converged connectivity provider in the country. Now, I know that we're starting to run short on time. We're about a half an hour away from launch, so I want to bring over, among the special guests today that you're going to hear about and hear from, I want to introduce a really important person here. Abel is here. There he is. And I know, Abel, I know as the CEO of SpaceMobile, AST SpaceMobile, you're going to want to have a couple of words with these folks before we get started.
A little bit more than a couple of words. Hey guys, thank you very much to be this early. Thank you. And I just got a word. We're launching at the beginning of the window, so that's we're going up. So I want to thank everybody that has worked so hard to get us to this point. I mean, it has been an incredible journey, a very, very difficult journey with a lot of reward. But this journey started by designing the largest ever structures put into space. And the first one was launched in 2022, called BlueBird 3. We learned a lot from that, still working perfectly. We did the first ever phone call from space. We did the first ever LTE connection from space. We did the first 5G connection from space. And we are working in building the first and only broadband system to connect the phone that you just have in your pocket. That is a tremendous, tremendous goal. We are just at the beginning of it, and we are super, super thankful for all the support that we get from you, for our investors, for everybody that follow this project so, so closely. We're extremely, extremely proud, extremely thankful, and we hope to change the world together with you. So this is the beginning of that journey. So let me quickly talk about what is going to happen now. So shortly we're going to move outside. We're going to see liftoff if we continue to be on time. We're going to go up. We're going to check the satellites a lot. 9G, that's roughly what you see when you're in a roller coaster going up. When we get to around 525 kilometers, we're going to separate. Hopefully we have the feed that you will be able to see how the satellites eject out. My engineers are going to call me. We had a back room somewhere here where we're going to take command of the satellite and start communicating with them. But you probably will be able to see the booster coming back, and also you will be able to see as we eject the satellites into space. This is a super exciting moment, and that's what we have planned for today. So that's then in the following days, we're going to take command of the satellite, we're going to check them up, and we are going to be preparing to basically deploy them. When we deploy them, you know, as they go up, they are of the size of a small car, but when they deploy up, they are a very large structure. I mean, that's in meters, roughly 8 meter by 8 meter, roughly 24 feet by 24 feet of area, each one of them. And that's really what makes the difference in connecting the phone that you have in your pocket. That's where it really make it a broadband system. That's what it make it that you can connect directly to your phone. When we have them deployed and starting operations, we plan to start using them fully. There is two usage for them. One is a government usage. They're going to start using them very early on in the mission. And then our partners, which also were super thankful, AT&T and Verizon, they're going to start also using, testing, and start offering the service. So our goal is to offer the service as close as possible as it will be when we're in full operation, but obviously, we are bringing up satellites, the time that we have them available for services is limited, but as we add more, we get more continuous service. So that's, again, this is the beginning of the journey. Our next satellites, these ones are the largest ever launch into LEO. Our next generation is 3.5 times bigger. So that really gives us a lot of runway in how to basically keep the world connected. Again, thank you so much. Thank you to be part of this. Very, very honored to having you all waking up this early to see this together with us. My engineers are around. We're going to leave after we lose sight of the satellites, and hopefully you will stay and see the remaining of the mission. Again, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, you just heard from Abel Avellán, the founder, chairman, and CEO of AST SpaceMobile, live from Kennedy Space Center. And he brought us some great news, which is they're putting propellant in that rocket, as well as liquid oxygen. We need those two ingredients in our launch vehicle today to make it go up. So if you are just joining us, we are live in Cape Canaveral, Florida, and I'm your host, Dave Mosher, from the AST SpaceMobile communications team. We are counting down to a launch at 4:52 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, which is the opening of our window. This is great news because we've been fighting some pretty unfavorable weather conditions. And while we wait, we have some cool animations that help show the scale of those BlueBird satellites that Abel was talking about, and the ones that we are attempting to launch today, our first generation BlueBird satellites. So you can see in the picture to my left, your right, I guess, we have a scale size animation. So you see those cars pulling up. This thing can fit 6 full-size cars on top of it once it's unfolded, a small family powerboat. It's also about just under half the size of a volleyball court. Or if you live in a city, it's roughly a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment in terms of square footage. It's about 700 square feet. Now, when those BlueBirds are folded up, they're put into the top of the rocket. The rocket goes up, as you're seeing here, and it needs to reach 17,000 miles per hour to reach low Earth orbit. And once it does, that second stage will come off, and eventually the satellites will be separated from the launch vehicle, as you can see here. That step, by the way, is not going to happen until about 55 minutes after launch, but don't go anywhere because we're going to keep the webcast going throughout that entire time. Now, once these satellites go into orbit, and they are deployed, which was a process that could take a few weeks. We'll see what happens. They will be the largest commercial communications arrays in low Earth orbit, as Abel just said. You need that kind of aperture to provide high-speed cellular broadband from space and connect with everyday smartphones like this one. Now, to get these satellites into space, as I just said, we compacted them and placed them inside the top of the rocket. That's the nose cone you can see over here. Inside are the 5 satellites. They're covered in gold sort of thermal blanketing, and they're stacked in a stack of cans or like a revolver from a gun. And that thing is going to reach 17,000 miles per hour in a matter of 8 minutes or so. And that is about a dozen times faster than a bullet fired from a gun. So if you're a satellite in low Earth orbit, that is essentially the speed that you need to continuously free fall around the planet. And that's kind of, in a nutshell, how satellites work. Now, launch is just the first important phase of the BlueBird 1 through 5 mission. Once we get these satellites up, our goal, as I said, is to deploy them. And then we need to test them. We're going to have a test campaign we announced that we're going to use about 2,000 ordinary mobile phones all over the world with select testers to kick off the first ever space-based cellular broadband commercial services with our incredible partners like the one we saw here today. We had J.R. Wilson sitting here. This means we have today's launch attempt. We are on the cusp of creating a network that is rich with use cases for consumers, first responders, government agencies, and more. So how will this space-age approach to cellular broadband actually work? Lucky for you, we have prepared an explainer that highlights how the BlueBird 1 through 5 mission and its underlying technologies will do just that. Let's have a look.
You're driving through the middle of nowhere when your car breaks down. No signal, no way to call for help. While camping, a family member is injured. You can't look up treatments or dial 911. There's an emergency back home. You're hiking through a national park and you don't get the calls. Mobile connectivity is so essential to modern life, we assume it will always be there when we need it. Trouble is, vast regions of the planet remain dead zones for cellular broadband, places where cell towers may never reach. But thanks to AST SpaceMobile's groundbreaking satellite technology, that's about to change. We're working toward a future where no one has to feel stranded again. AST SpaceMobile is an American company building the world's first and only space-based cellular broadband network. From the beginning, we designed our satellites to work like cell towers in space and directly with ordinary, everyday mobile phones. Our goal? Provide coverage to even the most remote of areas, in the middle of a desert, on top of a mountain, in coastal waters, even in flight. And not just SOS, text, or voice. We're talking high-speed downloads, streaming, and video calls. A way to stay safer out there, share your journey with loved ones, work from wherever you want to, or maybe catch up on your favorite show. Imagine other ways space-based cellular broadband could change our lives for good. Internet-connected sensors powering more efficient farming and transportation, lowering the cost of groceries. Doctors monitoring patients in real time, regardless of where they are, improving healthcare outcomes. Small businesses in rural areas reaching more customers, boosting economic growth. And in a world where disasters can take down traditional connectivity, having a backup plan is more important than ever. If the power goes out and mobile towers are not operational, AST SpaceMobile's planned global network could serve as a crucial backup. Victims could still call for help, plus see more efficient distribution of emergency services, food, and other supplies. To use AST SpaceMobile, you won't need a special device, just the phone you already have in your pocket, powered by existing cellular providers. Premium spectrum through our U.S. partners is ideal for passing through trees, cars, and even buildings. We're creating a fleet of commercial satellites called BlueBirds. Each will have the largest ever commercial communications array in low Earth orbit, helping support up to 120 megabit per second peak data rates. At AST SpaceMobile, we're building a revolution in how the world connects, together with our strategic partners, which include AT&T, Bell Canada, Google, Rakuten, Verizon, and Vodafone. We also have agreements with more than 45 mobile operators around the world, who together serve more than 2.8 billion subscribers and counting. It's the beginning of a new era to connect the unconnected.
That video really just scratches the surface of what should be possible with AST SpaceMobile's space-based cellular broadband network. And speaking of that network, we are coming to you live from Cape Canaveral, Florida. We're not too far from here sits a big rocket with the first 5 commercial satellites on top. And that is the view you're seeing here. If you see a bunch of gases coming off the side, that is because propellant is going inside of the rocket, which is a good thing. We want that to happen. And once again, I am Dave Mosher. I am your host from the AST SpaceMobile communications team. Now, the large first stage or booster of our 229-foot tall launch vehicle should be just about done filling up with that very chilly liquid oxygen I mentioned. Again, it's about negative 330, negative 340 degrees Fahrenheit. Very, very cold. And there's also RP1, which is the propellant. That is a high-grade form of kerosene. And that's why it's looking a little frosty here. We have some gas coming off. And this view, by the way, is coming from about 2.7 miles from the launch pad. So it's a really close view, pretty awesome look at SpaceX's pad out there at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Now, after this, after the first stage booster is done being filled, our launch provider will fill up the upper or second stage with liquid oxygen, or LOX. And that is needed to rapidly combust that RP1 fuel and send this rocket soaring toward low Earth orbit, which is where we want those satellites to get dropped off. Now, some other things to note about this is the launch timeline. Like, what are we expecting? So right now, we have been filling up with propellant and liquid oxygen. The next really big step that we're looking for here is to finish that upper stage LOX loading. Then we're going to do something called an engine chill around T-minus 7 minutes. Now, what is that? That is when SpaceX will run some of that liquid propellant and oxygen through, or one of the two, through the engines to chill them. Because if you have a lot of very cold fuel hitting a relatively warm engine, that's not good. So they have to do a pre-chill on those engines. And that'll take a while. And right around the 1 minute mark is we're really going to see if we're going to have a launch today, because that's when our launch provider will start going through all the checks needed. And around 45 seconds to launch, we should know if we're going to do it, because we're going to hear a go for launch from that launch director. And again, to my left and your right is a view of that rocket on the launch pad, LC-40, here in Cape Canaveral, Florida. So we got I got a special graphic I want to share with you. This is from SpaceX. It's up on their website under their launches page. Now, this is kind of the full profile look at what our mission is going to do today. On the bottom left there, you see that rocket, and it takes off, and it's going to take about 2.5 minutes to get to a point where we have stage separation. That is when the booster and the upper stage, so the first stage and second stage, will separate. Now, that booster is going to flip around, which is why you see that loop up top, and it's going to come back to Earth, and SpaceX is going to try to reuse that. And I believe the booster we are launching on today has been used a number of times. So that's going to go through an entry burn. It's going to do some automated landing back here at the Cape. For those of you sitting out at the Banana Creek bleachers, our guests here today, they're going to see quite a show because it's very loud. There's some sonic booms. There's some flame. It's pretty exciting. Now, immediately after that booster comes back, we should see or hear about second engine cutoff. That is called SECO, and it's the first of a couple cutoffs, and we need that to start a coast phase into orbit around Earth. Now, our satellites aren't just going to hang out there. Well, they're going to hang out there for about 45 minutes, and then after that, we're going to get a little burn on that upper stage and get those satellites to exactly where they need to go. And at that point, at about 55 minutes into the launch, we are going, hopefully, to see some views of those satellites separating from the upper stage. So now, while we wait for this process to ensue and we get to launch, I want to share a quick interview with a former member of the military, speaking of the Space Force Station, and someone who has a really great pulse on how first responders today could really use space-based cellular broadband from AST SpaceMobile. Let's play that clip with Chris Sambar, head of AT&T Network and an AST SpaceMobile board member.
I'm Chris Sambar. I'm the president of Network, and I'm responsible for AT&T's global network. At AT&T, we have what we call the FirstNet mission, and we've been at this for years, and we're now the largest provider of connectivity to first responders nationwide. That's police, fire, and emergency medical services. And as part of that mission, when we started this years ago, we said we're going to do everything we can to connect the unconnected and give first responders connectivity everywhere in the United States, absolutely everywhere. And so an example that a first responder gave me one time was they said, We pulled up to a bad car accident. It was on a windy road in the mountains. There was no cell connectivity from any carrier. Our radios, their land mobile radios, didn't work either. And so they had a really hard time getting a connection so that they could call emergency medical services. And then when emergency medical services showed up, it was challenging for them to be able to triage the patient, send vital signs back to the hospital, and quickly get the patient out. So being able to provide that connectivity, and not just voice and text connectivity, but full data connectivity, really important for first responders. And they've been telling us that since the very beginning of the FirstNet program. First responders operate in some really challenging conditions in some really challenging areas. Down on the border, out in the rural areas, in storms, during wildfires. And for them to have full connectivity, not just voice and text connectivity, but full data connectivity, is really important for them to be able to do their jobs, protecting us day to day, and also protect their own lives. The current satellite solutions on the market, they only provide voice service, limited texting service, and to some extent they'll provide data, but it's very rare. And AST is a completely different ballgame they're going after, which is, hey, we're going to provide full data connectivity. This is going to look very similar to cell service. This means connectivity anywhere in the world, not just the United States. And I've talked to other carriers in other countries that are part of the AST board, that are part of the AST mission now, that have relationships with AST, and we're all really, really excited about the potential that this has. Abel and I met, it's been about 6 years ago now, and I remember the first conversation, and he took me through a few slides, PowerPoint slides, of what they were gonna do, and I remember thinking in the back of my head, this guy's crazy, but this is a pretty interesting idea, and he's really, really smart, I knew that, and he's been really, really successful in his endeavors thus far, so we should get into this, and we should see what it's all about. And it's amazing, just amazing what they have been able to put together and accomplish thus far. It's funny, one of the first things that he told me, I said, well, what's next? What's the first thing we're gonna do to get this going? This was 6 years ago. And he said, Chris, we're gonna put a phone up in space. And I said, I thought you were gonna put satellites in space, Abel. He said, yeah, but it's a lot less expensive to put a phone in space and put the satellite stuff on the ground and test it and see if it works. I said, okay, that makes sense. Again, this guy's really, really smart. And sure enough, they did it. And then they went up and they put their first satellite in space, and now we're on the cusp of putting 5 satellites in space and bringing this whole dream to reality. So exciting.
I first met Chris a couple of years ago, and I have to say he's a big fan of what AST SpaceMobile is doing, as you can see with that video. And I'm really glad that he is on our board and in our orbit as a company. And while we're speaking of orbits, we are trying to get to launch today. We are looking at a 4:52 a.m. launch time. Now, if you're just joining us, I am Dave Mosher. I am the head of content here at AST SpaceMobile, and we are rapidly counting down to the launch of this mission, which is BlueBird 125. And we've heard some incredible partners of ours. And be sure to replay this broadcast. If you're just tuning in, I know some of you are coming in pretty late. You know, you're waking up and you're just trying to see if this rocket's going to go. Well, it's probably going to go today. That's the good news. But we have some really great content that we've done earlier in the show. So definitely take a listen, take a watch after the show, and or rewind the broadcast, whatever you want to do, because there's some really cool stuff in that broadcast. Now, our launch vehicle is getting close to fully fueled, if it's not fully fueled already. I think we're right about the 7-minute mark, which is when the LOX load on that upper stage rocket of the Falcon 9 is going to be finished. Now, at the 1-minute mark, that's what we're really looking for. That's when the flight computer should start vital pre-launch checks as the propellant tanks pressurize for launch. We need that pressure to push out all of that fuel and explode it in the engines and push the rocket up. Now, the big moment we are really waiting for, though, again, as I said earlier, is about 45 seconds into launch. That is when the launch director should give a go for launch. After launch, we will switch over to some video and audio feeds from SpaceX, our launch provider, which should provide some stunning views of the mission as it ascends to space. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere. And about 8.5 minutes after that launch, the rocket's upper or second stage should reach about 17,000 miles per hour. Again, that's about a dozen times faster than a bullet shot from a gun. and it's going to cut off its engine and slip into low Earth orbit. That is where we want our satellites to be, but they have a bit of a journey ahead of them. So let's show those satellites one more time before they were closed up inside the nose cone, if we can. We have an encapsulation photo to pull up. And again, that photo is going to show, there we go. It's got the 5 gold thermal blanket wrapped satellites. That's what's inside that nose cone on top of the rocket. What a great shot. All right. Now, I've got one more thing to show you. This is an explainer video showing the soup to nuts look at this entire mission from launch until deployment. Let's play that clip.
Cellular broadband has transformed our world. It has brought humanity closer together, on the move, and in times of great need. Yet today, 2.6 billion people have no internet access, and more than 5.5 billion cellular subscribers still experience coverage gaps. That's why AST SpaceMobile, a pioneering American satellite company, is on a mission to revolutionize mobile connectivity. We're building the first and only space-based cellular broadband network, one designed to work directly with off-the-shelf smartphones and at 4G and 5G speeds. A new dawn for the mobile web begins with our first 5 commercial satellites, called BlueBirds. Here's how AST SpaceMobile's unprecedented mission will work. Our first-generation BlueBird satellites have large, thin arrays made of microns. Each micron has solar cells on one side that power cellular antennas on the other. Together, they form a phased array with an area of nearly 700 square feet. That's just under half the size of a volleyball court, yet each folds up to the size of a large refrigerator. This allows our engineers to tuck all 5 of the satellites inside the top of a rocket or fairing. It takes under 10 minutes for the rocket to accelerate to 17,000 miles per hour and reach a zone called low Earth orbit, or LEO. Hundreds of miles above the planet, each packed-up satellite separates from the rocket. Our team will check all satellite systems before releasing each BlueBird from its container. Next, the microns will start automatically unfolding as an array. Once the array is deployed, 2 steerable antennas will pop out from a central hub called the control sat. A months-long process then begins to bring the satellites into service with industry-leading partners like AT&T, Verizon, and Vodafone, among others. This includes spacing out the 5 BlueBird satellites in LEO to provide optimal coverage. So how will these marvelous machines squash dead zones? The same way phones normally work with cell towers and providers. Let's break it down. In a regular cellular connection, a smartphone attaches to antennas at the top of a tower when the signals are strong enough. At the bottom of the tower, a base station computer interprets those signals like a switchboard operator, connecting the phone to networks like AT&T's and Verizon's and the internet. Each BlueBird array is like squeezing hundreds of cell tower tops together. This allows each satellite to beam hundreds of cells of coverage over hundreds of thousands of square miles as it flies overhead. In the US, BlueBirds will connect directly to unmodified phones using premium low-band cellular spectrum. These signals can pass through foliage, cars, and even buildings. Meanwhile, our gateway antennas on the ground connect the satellite to our partners' networks. It's like combining hundreds of base stations. Our solution makes smartphones function as if they are connected to ordinary cell towers. To provide continuous coverage, we plan to launch many satellites, including a next-generation BlueBird that's 3 times larger. As we build out our constellation, we aim to bring seamless 4G and 5G coverage to the US. Flying additional BlueBirds would help build substantial global coverage, kicking off a bold new era for mobile and human connectivity.
All right, that was a really cool video, kind of giving you a profile of this mission. I want to show you a couple things before we get to launch, which is just under 3 minutes away. One of those views I want to give you is our Satellite Operations Center in Lanham, Maryland. Now, this is a place where, I don't know if those guys are listening, but if they can give us a wave, that'd be great. This is a place where our mobsters, our mission operators, are really looking at all the things that are coming down from the satellite. Currently, we have Blue Walker 3 up there, but they're waiting for 5 new birds to enter into their operation here. And they're going to work hard over the coming weeks and months to get those satellites out, deployed, ready for testing and ready for commercial service. Now, let's go back to the launch site here. We have a ton of guests out here in the crowd at the Banana Creek bleachers, and you guys are live, and they're waiting for that launch. Again, we're at 4:52 a.m. Eastern time. That is when they're going to try to get a launch. It's just under 2 minutes away. So let's go back to a view of that rocket while we wait for launch. And we're going to stay on that. And again, after this rocket takes off, we're going to cut over to SpaceX's feed because they have some pretty incredible views on the rocket and near the payload that should eventually show that payload coming off the rocket about 55 minutes after launch. So don't go anywhere. We're going to keep this webcast going and hand it off to our partner a little bit after launch. In the meantime, we're going to keep showing you these views of the rocket. We're going to track it up into the sky for as long as we can go and then switch over to SpaceX's feed. Now, the first thing you're going to see from this rocket is a big bright flash on the bottom if we're getting a liftoff today, and it's going to rapidly ascend into the sky. And about a minute after launch, it's going to enter a phase called max Q, which is maximum dynamic pressure. That's when the forces and the strain on the rocket are greatest. It's going really fast through a lot of air. Once it gets through there, those fairings are going to pop off and expose the satellite, and it's going to continue its journey into space. And at about 8.5 minutes, that's when they're looking for second engine cutoff and a coast phase. So let's watch. And we have liftoff of the BlueBird 1 through 5 mission and the dawn of a new era for mobile connectivity. Again, in just a moment, we are going to switch over to our launch provider's video feeds. I'll see you back here after satellite separation a little over 50 minutes from now.
After stage 1 shuts down its engines and separates from the second stage, the booster turns itself around in a flip maneuver to make its way back to land near the launch site. The boost back burn is a controlled engine burn that both slows the booster's forward velocity and then propels it towards its landing site. After boost back, stage 1 will continue to coast in microgravity to the highest point of its flight, called the apogee. It will then begin to descend.
Cut off.
There we just heard MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
Stage separation.
And back ignition.
And SES-1.
Suspect startup.
Great call outs there, and a great view of that MVAC engine lighting up. So after boost back, it will then begin to descend under the acceleration of gravity until it's time to relight the engines for entry burn.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Great call out there for fairing separation. We will be attempting to retrieve these fairing halves once they fall back to Earth with our recovery vessel, Go Cosmos. Coming up next, we will have boost back shutdown right on time.
Both vehicles are nominal trajectory.
So we're now about T plus 3 minutes and 48 seconds into today's mission. And our next major mission milestone will be the first stage entry burn, which will take place just past the T plus 6 minute mark. To start the entry burn, we will relight 3 of the M1D engines, which is really similar to pumping the brakes to slow down the vehicle as it passes back into the Earth's atmosphere. The entry burn helps reduce the heat generated from the friction of the atmosphere and reduces the aerodynamic forces acting on Falcon, which helps maintain controlled flight and prepare for the landing burn. We are about 1 minute and 15 seconds away from the first stage entry burn. The Merlins on the first stage are optimized for sea level, and these achieve about 190,000 pounds of thrust each during ascent and descent. And at liftoff, Falcon 9's first stage has thrust that's greater than 5 747 airplanes at full power. And the MVAC engine that you see burning on your screen has a much wider nozzle, and that one is optimized to 220,500 pounds of thrust in vacuum. That entry burn coming up in about 30 seconds, where Falcon 9 will decelerate by firing its Merlin engine.
Stage 1 entry burn.
You can, great call out there, and you can see the entry burn just completed. But you can see that that the stage 1 is still continuing to move really, really fast, even though it is slowing down. During entry burn, the vehicle is flying through Merlin's exhaust gases or its plume, which deposits a layer of soot on the vehicle surface. And that soot comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses. And with each flight, the soot builds up a little bit more on the outside of the vehicle. We have a landing burn coming up in about 30 seconds from now.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Great call for the landing burn.
Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And that was the 13th launch and landing for this first stage. And this landing marks SpaceX's 347th recovery of an orbital class rocket, including first stage landings for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
We have SECO 1 coming up in about
Stage 2 FTS
15 seconds from now.
MVAC shutdown.
Great call out. We just had SECO 1, and we aren't expecting to have ground station coverage for the first 3 deployments today, so we'll be returning around T+1 hour for the final 2 deployments. So we'll see you then.
Good transfer orbit.
Welcome back. We're now T plus 44 minutes and 35 seconds into the mission and coming up on SES-2 and SECO-2. In about under a minute, we will have the second ignition of stage 2 for a short 5-second burn. And just about 9 minutes after that, we will have our first payload deploy, which, as a reminder, we do not expect to have ground station coverage for. We'll be back at T plus 1 hour for today's 4th and 5th payload deploys. Again, SES-2 and SECO-2 coming up shortly.
Good orbit insertion.
Great call out there and confirmation of SES-2 and SECO-2. We'll be back at T plus 1 hour for today's 4th and 5th payload deploys. And until then, enjoy some space tunes and we'll see you soon.
Everyone, this is Dave Mosher, the head of content with AST SpaceMobile. And what we're seeing right now is our payload coasting around Earth, and it's going toward its deployment point. And that is the point at which the 5 BlueBird 1 through 5 satellites will separate from the launch vehicle. And we heard from SpaceX that we're going to see some live views of the 4th and the 5th satellites coming off of the dispenser on top of that second or upper stage rocket, which is currently flying around the Earth at 17,000 miles an hour, which is about a dozen times faster than a bullet. And that's the speed you need to reach in low Earth orbit to remain in free fall around the planet, which is what we want to happen. So in about 10 minutes, we should have some really cool footage of those golden BlueBirds coming off of that dispenser. So stick around, don't go anywhere. And after that, we'll have a little sign off and we can all take a nap.
Hello and welcome back. We're standing by for confirmation of the deploy of the first 3 BlueBird satellites, which were set to deploy during the blackout period. Just to recap today's mission so far, we had an on-time liftoff at 4:52 a.m. Eastern Time, which was followed by a stage separation about 2.5 minutes after launch. And the first stage booster then returned to Earth and successfully landed.
We have numerical time to suggest that the first BlueBird, second BlueBird, and third BlueBird have deployed.
Well,
copy.
We just heard confirmation.
Looks like video just came in.
Oh, we just heard confirmation of the first 3 BlueBird deployments. And so we are now about T+1 hour and almost 1 minute into today's mission, and we are coming up on the deployment of the 4th BlueBird satellite. That 4th payload deploy should be happening shortly. Continuing on with the recap, we had the first stage booster, which returned to Earth and successfully landed at LZ1 about 7.5 minutes after takeoff. And we also had 2 successful ignitions and shutdowns of our second stage MVAC engine. And we are coming up on the 4th payload deploy. We have an awesome view of that 4th BlueBird satellite deploying. We'll now head into a short coast and be back for our final deployment about 3 minutes from now.
We have numerical time to indicate that the 4th BlueBird has been deployed.
welcome back. We are now about T+1 hour and 7 minutes into today's mission, and coming up next, we have deployment of the 5th and final BlueBird satellite. We had a really great view of the 4th payload deployment, and we should be having a similarly awesome view of the 5th payload deploying shortly.
BlueBird 5 deployed.
And there you saw on your screen successful deployment of the 5th BlueBird payload. And with that confirmation, we will bring today's webcast to a close. Today's mission marked SpaceX's
All right, welcome back. I'm Dave
383rd
Mosher
overall
with
mission to
AST
date.
SpaceMobile, and that was absolutely incredible. I've worked for this company for many years, and I've seen some amazing things, but watching those BlueBirds come off that dispenser and reach low Earth orbit, that really takes the cake. Or if you've been a fan of us for a while, the Space Waffle. There's a lot more of this unprecedented BlueBird 1 through 5 mission to go, as we will spend the next weeks deploying all the satellites, meaning unfolding them, and then some more time getting those satellites up to the ability for us to test with them using thousands of cell phones all over the world. And eventually, we're going to bring those into commercial service in conjunction with our partners who were here today and able to see that amazing launch. So until then, though, this webcast is officially a wrap. You can get the latest information on the BlueBird 1 through 5 mission by following our social media accounts on X, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and other places. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for being part of our mission to connect the unconnected.